So I've got a question for you. Can you trust Steam reviews anymore? Can you trust the Steam AI disclosure? You'd like to think that you can, but today we've got this story. One where two games from, when you follow the whole chain, billion-dollar companies just broke Steam's biggest rules. I mean, one of them should be pretty much one of the biggest rules, review manipulation. And so far, these companies are getting away with it. And if Valve don't solve this, it will open the floodgates to behavior that, at least in one case with the reviews, would completely ruin trust on the platform. So basically, what if a Steam review was about as trustworthy as an Amazon one? Don't think that's the Steam that you and I want to use. Also, here's something you'll find interesting that I just found out using Ground News, who are today's sponsor. You know the Screen Actors Guild strike in gaming? Well, they just reached a tentative deal that's ending the year-long video game strike. But what's interesting is watching how outlets spin it differently. Ground News here shows 98 sources covering the story, and the framing is all over the map. Some outlets lead saying strike suspended, others emphasize that it's a tentative agreement, which is a little bit more optimistic. And here's another bit that caught my eye. UK outlets are calling the AI stuff a direct threat to the industry, but the US-centered sources, they're focusing more on the AI protections being secured. Essentially, it's kind of like same deal, but different narratives, different framings about whether voice actors won or just got a okay compromise. You also can see the bias breakdown. It tells its own story. 63% center coverage, but only 5 right-leaning sources touched this. And look, when a major labor news story gets ignored by one side of the spectrum, that's you not being served. That's you missing out on part of the conversation. And that's one example of why I rely on Ground News's Vantage plan. There's so much else as well. I mean, here I can see 98% high factuality or above ratings for the sources. I can compare how the different outlets package the same facts. And all that helps me catch what your usual sources may end up skipping on. And once you're set up, say by adding the entertainment and gaming pages, you can just get ahead of industry news and actually see the big picture. So go to ground.news/Bellular, and that's where you'll get 40% off unlimited access with the Vantage plan. That's what I use. That's the best deal that you'll get. And the link to get it is just down below in the video description. Alright, I've first got to set the scene before we get to the naughty rule breakers of today. So on Steam, right, usually rule breakers kind of get nuked. I mean, here's an example from February where users flagged a game called Piratefy. And as it turns out, it was just riddled with what they suspected was malware. So that happened. 4 days after the game launched, Steam killed its store page. Then they reviewed everything. And 2 days after that, users who ran the game in their machine got warning emails about potential risk. And this is an example of things going right. You see, Rule 9 of Steam onboarding states that you should not distribute malware. Shocking thing. But here, a clear violation led to a very clear result. As was the case with this other story, where an entire publisher's library was pulled because they were essentially churning out endless fake games designed to manipulate Steam's trading card economy. Kind of crazy stuff. And we've seen instances of individual devs being whacked for trolling, for ban evasion, and if you're an angry dev who decides to tweet a death threat to Gabe Newell, yeah, you will be taken out on Steam. Now, in every example here, it's a very clear pattern, and it's what we would all want. A rule is broken, Valve finds out, they take action, and there you go, everything is good, the platform is healthy. But here's the thing, those examples were mostly smaller teams, mostly indies. This week, though, we've got 2 listed companies breaking Steam's rules. And this sort of thing has happened before. Remember the whole discussion about the in-game advertisements and how a whole bunch of companies were essentially just kind of flying in under the radar, being unpunished? Well, I actually think today's situation is even worse. First up today, we got Nexon, and they're no stranger to controversy, like say the MapleStory lawsuits, the Dark and Darker lawsuits, but now it's their abuse of Steam reviews. And I think this is one we should be absolutely scathing and clear about because it's goddamn ridiculous. So here's how it went down. Last week, Blue Archive launched in Steam. And if you've got no idea what Blue Archive is, good for you. You're free. But so you're not confused, it's a huge gacha game. It's been going for a few years, I think 4, very popular in mobile, and now it's on PC. And it seems to be doing real well. 91% positive reviews from 8,524 users. Pretty damn good. Now say you're a connoisseur of the whole collectible girls plus concept genre of game, so all the gacha games. You'd probably think the Blue Archive is just as good as this gacha darling. And take a look at this particular YouTube video. It serves as a good example. The title is I Played Musashi Pretty Derby because it had 96% positive reviews. Now what if you saw a similarly titled video but about Blue Archive saying, 91% reviews, you'd probably think it's really good. But here's the thing. While those reviews look similar, you would be wrong to trust them, because there's a key difference. Cygames are not breaking Steam's rules, but Nexon is. You see, to celebrate Blue Archive's PC launch, Nexon created celebration events. There's a fan art contest for currency or Steam gift cards, social media raffle for currency, and then there's the big problem, a Steam review event, where basically all users get in-game gifts once Steam hits a target number of reviews. Negative or positive, doesn't matter, it's just the number of reviews. Now here's the thing. Steam's rules for user reviews are crystal clear. I will quote them. Don't attempt to abuse or artificially manipulate the review system. Don't solicit reviews in exchange for any games, DLC, money, or other rewards. Absolutely clear-cut. Those rules are being broken. And it does kind of make sense why they would try it. I mean, review manipulation is completely commonplace on mobile stores. It's one of the reasons why so many of those games have massively inflated review scores, by the way. They're not actually that good. But of course it's done for a reason. The good reviews look good. They encourage early adoption. They make something spread more. But of course, on Steam, unlike the mobile stores, it is explicitly against the rules. Now, Nexon is worth a hell of a lot of money. They're a big company, and they're even worth a lot of money to Valve. And that means there's a real simple question here. How much does Valve value their own rules? How much do they value that? Will they make an example out of this game? What will they actually do? Because the rules are being broken. And if a rule is broken and you do nothing, people will question the rule. And this brings me to today's second defendant. The Alters is the new game from 11-bit. You probably know 11-bit from Frostpunk. And the good news is, it's a great game. It's 86% on OpenCritic, 88% in Steam, and that's all from real, non-Blue Archived reviews, which is nice. The problem is 11-bit's mistake with false representation of generative AI. So here's essentially what happened, right? A user noticed that background art contained an AI prompt. It was a bunch of code, but one of the lines was basically the prompt. Now, this was a small asset. It was the kind of thing that basically would normally be covered by lorem ipsum text. So basically, some AI-generated placeholder stuff, and in this case, they basically used AI to generate some technobabble stuff, but then they left it in. And look, if they didn't notice that, and that was the reason why they didn't use the disclosure on Steam, I suppose that would have been kind of understandable. But it actually turns out it's not just that, because something else happened. Non-English users noticed something altogether different. Those same prompts appeared in subtitles on some of the in-game movies. Now, when called out for this issue, 11-bit did confirm that both things were true, that the art was indeed placeholder text that wasn't removed, but that the subtitles was actually deliberate. And here's how they explain it. It's late in development for their game, and the team decides to implement these movies. But they have a problem, and that problem is localization. Their localization partner would not be able to get that stuff done in time. And that essentially meant that with the time they had, 11-bit could either ship no subtitles for them, or they could translate them in-house with the resources that they had. Where clearly, of course, they just went to using chatbots for that, which is kind of understandable. A language model is pretty good at translating language. Obviously not as good as a proper creative localization job, but you get the point. They went to that technology. Now, they say that this was only 0.3% of the overall text in the game, and so they decided to just make that call, to use the chatbots so that they could have the subtitles. Now, in their statement, they acknowledge that the wrong call was made, and they say that they should have simply let you know. Yeah, duh, they should have. But not just because it's the right thing to do. Actually, they should have because they need to. You see, Steam has got generative AI disclosure rules, and the rule states, pre-generated any kind of content created with the help of AI tools during development. So clearly, 11-bit also broke Steam's rules. And to be clear, Steam's definition as it stands is pretty damn broad. So if your game is using AI services during development, that's something you've got to disclose, seemingly, whether it makes it to the final product or not. It's broad as hell, but that's the wording of the rule. So 11-bit may have intended to do this and then replace the content, but they launched without the disclosure that they needed. And as of the time of writing, there is still no disclosure. Now sure, if they put that disclosure there, maybe they would have lost a few sales on the launch of the game, or something like that. But I've got to imagine that audience trust and not breaking Steam's rules, those things should almost certainly be higher. So that's our two naughty games companies. Now, in a way, this could all just seem like tattling to the teacher, you know? Gabe, these developers are doing a terrible thing in your platform, yeah. No, it's not that. There's a reason why I bring all of this up. You see, in both cases, there have been no consequences. Nexon has not retracted their overt review manipulation campaign. 11-bit have not updated their store page. How little effort would it take to update the store page? I mean, come on. Now, sure, there's bad PR in both cases, but there's little material consequence coming from Valve. And unfortunately for Valve, a pattern is beginning to form. 11-bit and Nexon broke the rules, as did the smaller games that I opened up today's video with. Now, those small games, like with malware and other things, were very easy to punish, but a well-liked, well-selling game from a real big company that's worth a lot of money, that's, in a way, harder to punish for Valve. It certainly seems so anyway. I mean, in one way, it's actually just as easy. The rules are the rules. Just apply them, forehead. But that's not really how reality ends up working. What Valve has got to do is manage their relationships with each company. And here it would appear that the value of the relationship and the associated revenue with that is worth more to Valve than their own rules. But I think they should be worried about that, because I think we both know what this really would do. It would set a precedent. The point can be made with a very simple hypothetical. What happens when another developer manipulates reviews with exactly the same tactics as Blue Archive did, and then they get punished by Valve, but they just say, but what the hell? You let Blue Archive happen. You never issued a statement and you never punished Nexon. Why are you being unfair to me? And yeah, Valve could say, well, look at the rules, you broke them. To which the company could rightly say, well, clearly, Valve, it's not a rule because those people, Blue Archive, also broke it and you didn't do anything about it. Now, look, what I'm about to say is not really apples to apples, but there's a reason why, right? In the legal system, you have the law as it is written, but then you've also got case law. And the idea being that case law guides a judge on how to interpret the word of the law and actually apply it in, a real material scenario. So here, think of Valve kinda like the judge. I mean, they're also legislative, but you get my point, right? What Valve have got to do is act, and they need to act because they need to set a precedent of how their rules are followed. And that's the problem with Valve's kind of fluffily worded rules. Even take the generative AI one. Technically, you could argue that almost any game would fall under that if their business operations are running on an email platform that perhaps AI auto-labels their emails, because that would be contributing to how the game is actually made. So from that perspective, not only have Valve got a very poorly worded AI disclosure policy thing, as for their actual rules, like the ones that Nexon are maliciously exploiting, well, if Valve have the rules and they don't enforce them, then that would essentially be seen as, oh, well, in that case, you set the precedent that doing this at the level of Blue Archive does not get you slammed, doesn't get you banned or actioned against. And that's what could lead other developers and publishers to try the same thing. And if Valve was to punish them, they could probably even make a legal case of Valve incorrectly applying their rules, as is understood through Valve, basically not giving a shit about their rules earlier. And I suppose if you're a Nexon stan, you could kind of say, well, hey, they don't specify that the review needs to be positive. It's not asking for that, therefore it should be fine. Well, no, it still is manipulation. It's similar to, like, preaching to your own choir. The people targeted by this are Blue Archive players, people who would want the game to succeed and who will get rewards for the review milestones. So of course those will skew positive. Of course it is manipulation. And that erodes the value of and the trust in Steam reviews. And that is something that cannot become normal. As for 11-bit, well, they broke the rule. There should be a slap. But ultimately, I do think it was a misjudgment impacting a very small part of the game. Certainly, insofar as like AI disclosure related things would go, there is far more malicious stuff that could be going on. But that doesn't mean Valve shouldn't do anything, because if Valve does nothing here, they would just give the impression that this sort of thing is okay, and that they don't take their own rules seriously. And of course, you just know that if that happens, the grifter types would take any wiggle room that they could get and absolutely use it as a justification to just go hog wild. So something needs to be done, but it's still not as blatant a violation of the wording and the spirit of the rule as in the Nexon situation. So Valve, give them a slap, project to the rest of the industry that you're not asleep at the goddamn wheel, because if you are asleep at the wheel, the norms on your platform will change. One where we as customers cannot trust reviews, as an example. And guess what? If it's bad for us, if we can't trust reviews, if we can't trust the disclosures are actually authentic, we will feel less confident. We'll be less likely to buy on Steam, or at the very least, we'll think twice. And as anyone who understands sales knows, the second someone is starting to think twice, your conversion rate just absolutely falls to shit. So to Valve, I have a very simple message. Would you trust someone who doesn't enforce their own rules? I don't think you would. I don't think we should. So get on it. And to see what happens when you take a set of rules, the Stop Killing Games movement, and the death of Anthem, watch this video next.